Have you ever wondered why you keep preparing but never begin? You tell yourself you're being careful, that you're just waiting for the right moment, the perfect idea, the flawless execution. But months go by, years sometimes, and when you look back, the project is still in your mind, not in the world. The idea is still in your notebook, not in action. You call it perfectionism. Society even applauds you for it. Friends say you have high standards. Colleagues admire your attention to detail. But deep down, you know something's wrong. There's a strange kind of exhaustion inside you, a heavy weight that grows heavier the more you wait. It's not about getting it right. It's about being stuck in a loop you can't escape from. And here's a question no one dares to ask. What if perfectionism isn't about quality at all? What if it's just fear, dressed up in gold? Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, had a name for this pattern. He called it the fear of individuation, the terror of becoming who you truly are. Because when you embrace your potential, when you step into your full capacity, you lose the luxury of excuses. There's no more maybe later, no more I'm still learning, no more hiding behind drafts, outlines, or plans. When you become who you are meant to be, you can't go back. That's terrifying. It means facing the time you've wasted. It means confronting the parts of you that sabotaged yourself for years. Jung believed that the shadow, the part of you try to ignore, isn't just made of flaws or dark impulses. It's also made of power, potential, greatness. But power locked in the shadow turns against you. It becomes anxiety, overthinking, paralysis. You feel stuck, but you're not stuck. You're suppressing your own evolution. And the mind, when trapped in this state, creates clever defenses. Perfectionism is one of the most elegant. It's socially acceptable. It makes you look disciplined, thoughtful, refined. But underneath the surface, it's a cage. A prison you built yourself, brick by brick, with the finest materials. Every time you delay because it's not perfect yet, you reinforce the walls. Every time you tell yourself you're not ready, you tighten the lock. But what if you are ready? What if you've been ready for a long time, and you're just afraid of the consequences? Because success has consequences. Not just applause or recognition, but exposure, judgment, responsibility. The world will see you, and once they do, you can't pretend you're invisible anymore. It's safer to stay small, safer to hide behind almost ready. That's the perfection trap. It's not just about work. It's about life. Maybe you've dreamed of starting something bold, launching a project, speaking your truth, or simply living fully. But you tell yourself you're still preparing, still studying, still waiting for the right moment. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking, the years pass. And here's the hardest truth of all. You're not afraid of failing. You're afraid of succeeding. Because success means change. It means stepping out of the role you've carefully constructed for yourself. It means leaving the comfort of almost there and entering the chaos of action. The perfectionist mind fears chaos more than anything. It craves control. It wants guarantees, predictability, certainty. But life doesn't work like that. Neither does growth. Jung said, "You meet your destiny on the road you take to avoid it." And if you think perfection is the road to safety, you're already lost in the labyrinth. Because perfection is a mask that hides the raw, messy, uncomfortable process of becoming real. The real you is not perfect. The real you is unfinished. The real you is alive. And life is never perfect. But it moves. It grows. It risks. It falls, fails, and gets back up. Perfectionism doesn't protect you. It paralyzes you. It gives you the illusion of safety while silently draining your time, your energy, your potential. And at some point you have to decide, do you want to look perfect or do you want to live? Let's go deeper. Think of someone you admire, not because they're perfect, but because they're real. They make mistakes. They take risks. They do things before they're fully ready. That's why they move forward, while you stay stuck. Perfectionism convinces you that if you can just control every detail, you'll avoid pain, you'll avoid criticism, you'll avoid failure. But Carl Jung taught us that life doesn't work that way. The more you try to avoid life's natural chaos, the more you suffer. There's a psychological cost to staying safe. Every moment you spend trapped in perfectionism is a moment you're not living. Your energy turns inward. It spirals, loops, becomes anxiety. You start to overthink the simplest decisions. An email takes hours. A project stays in draft forever. A conversation you should have had weeks ago still hasn't happened. You're not refining. You're avoiding the unknown, avoiding exposure, avoiding success. But here's the paradox. The perfectionist doesn't really fear failure. Failure is safe. Failure confirms the belief, I'm not good enough yet. I need more time. It lets you stay in the role of the student, the preparer, the almost ready version of yourself. It keeps you away from the terrifying truth that you could succeed, that you could actually become powerful. And once you do, there's no turning back. Success demands that you step into the arena, fully visible, with no more excuses. It demands that you take ownership of your life. And for many people, that's more frightening than any failure. Jung called this the terror of becoming. It's not the world you fear, it's yourself. The part of you that knows you're capable of more. The part of you that could create, lead, transform. If only you'd get out of your own way. But that potential lives in the shadow. And the shadow isn't just made of flaws, it's made of suppressed greatness. Talents you buried because they felt too big, too dangerous, too exposing. Think back to your childhood. Maybe you were told not to be too much, not to shine too brightly, not to make others uncomfortable. So you learned to shrink, to hide, to polish your surface, keeping your real depth hidden beneath layers of perfectionism. This is not about being careful, it's about fear of power. Jung believed that most people fear their potential more than their limitations, because potential comes with responsibility. If you succeed, you can't blame anyone else anymore. You can't say, they held me back, or the timing wasn't right. You'll have to own your choices. You'll have to carry the weight of being fully alive. That's heavy. And so, unconsciously, you choose perfectionism over action. It feels noble, respectable, safe. But it's a trap. Because while you're perfecting, life is passing. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets. Not because you're getting worse, but because your fear is growing. Fear feeds on time. The more you postpone, the more you believe you're not ready. And here's the brutal truth. You will never feel ready. No one ever does. Readiness is not a feeling, it's a decision. At some point you have to say, I'm going to act anyway, even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect. Because action creates clarity. Action builds confidence. Action transforms you from a spectator into a creator. Perfectionism promises control, but life isn't meant to be controlled. It's meant to be lived. And sometimes, that means stepping into the unknown. Carl Jung said, "Only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life." Perfectionism rejects paradox. It wants clean lines, perfect answers, and guaranteed outcomes. But real life is messy, contradictory, chaotic, and beautiful. You can't escape that. You can only choose whether you'll participate in it or hide from it. And the choice is yours. Look around at your life right now. How much of what you call preparation is really just delay? How many projects, conversations, or dreams are stuck in limbo because you're waiting for perfection? You don't have to answer out loud, but you already know. There's a list in your mind, a mental graveyard of ideas you never started. And the tragic part? Most of them didn't die because they were bad ideas. They died because you never gave them a chance to live. You were so focused on doing it perfectly that you never did it at all. This is what Jung meant when he talked about psychic stagnation. When your creative energy has nowhere to go, it turns against you. It becomes restlessness, anxiety, depression, a sense of being stuck in your own life while time keeps moving forward without you. You check social media, scroll through other people's success stories, and you tell yourself, "I could have done that, if only I had started." But you didn't. And that's not because you're lazy. It's because starting means risking. Risking failure, yes, but also risking success. Because success changes your identity. Once you become the person who does the thing, you can't pretend to be the person who's still thinking about it. You can't hide behind drafts, outlines, or excuses. You become real, visible, and with visibility comes pressure, expectations, eyes watching you. That's why the perfectionist mind stays stuck in almost ready, almost launched, almost there. It's a clever way to avoid both failure and success at the same time. But here's the problem. Living in almost is exhausting. It drains you more than action ever could, because at least action gives you feedback. At least action creates progress, even if it's imperfect. But perfectionism? It's a loop. A never-ending loop that feeds on your time, your energy, and your potential. Jung understood this dynamic. He knew that the unconscious mind creates traps to keep you safe from psychological pain. And perfectionism is one of the most dangerous traps of all. It looks virtuous. It feels responsible. But it's actually avoidance in disguise. Avoidance of chaos. Avoidance of growth. Avoidance of life. Because life is never perfect. It's wild, messy, unpredictable. And the only way to participate fully is to let go of the need to control every outcome. Let go of the illusion that you'll ever feel ready. Let go of the belief that your first attempt has to be flawless. It won't be. It can't be. And that's okay. In fact, that's necessary. Because the path to mastery is paved with imperfect starts. You can't skip that step. No one can. So what are you really waiting for? What are you postponing in the name of perfection? What parts of your life are frozen because you're afraid of the next step? It's time to ask yourself honestly, do you want to keep polishing the plan, or do you want to live? Because the truth is simple. Perfect never happens, but real does, and real is where life is. If this resonates with you, consider subscribing to Depthora and turning on the notifications so we can go deeper together. Let's talk about the shadow. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow is one of the most misunderstood ideas in psychology. Most people think it's just about the dark side, your flaws, your mistakes, the parts of you you're ashamed of. But that's not the whole truth. The shadow is not just your darkness. It's your unrealized potential. It's the parts of you that you've buried, not because they're bad, but because they're powerful, because they're overwhelming, because they might force you to change your life. Imagine carrying around a box filled with all your unlived dreams, ideas, and abilities. But instead of opening the box, you keep it locked in the basement of your mind. Why? Because if you open it, you might have to act. You might have to create, to lead, to speak, to build, to risk. And that's terrifying. It's easier to stay in preparation mode. It's easier to say, I'm not ready yet. I just need to get better. That's how perfectionism protects the ego. It creates a barrier between you and the power inside you, because power is dangerous, not just for others, but for you. If you step into your full capacity, you'll have to face judgment. You'll have to face expectations from the world and from yourself. And once you succeed, you can't pretend you're small anymore. You can't hide behind humility when you know you're capable of more. So the mind plays a trick. It tells you that perfection is the goal, when really, avoidance is the game. This is why Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And that's what perfectionism is. It's a socially acceptable way to avoid yourself, to avoid your power, to avoid the responsibility of becoming who you are meant to be. Because that path is uncomfortable. It requires shedding old identities, letting go of being the one who's still learning, releasing the role of the careful planner, the thoughtful observer, the silent dreamer. You have to become the person who acts, who risks, who creates in the real world, where things are messy and unpredictable. That's why perfectionists often stay stuck for years, because stepping out of the perfection trap feels like stepping off a cliff. It feels like losing control, and in a way, that's true. You can't control life. You can't control other people's reactions. You can't control whether you'll succeed or fail on the first try. All you can control is your willingness to try anyway, to act without certainty, to move forward without guarantees. That's where growth happens, not in the polishing, but in the doing, in the real world, not in your mind. But perfectionism keeps you in your head, thinking, planning, rehearsing, endlessly, while life passes you by. This creates a subtle kind of suffering, a quiet despair that builds over time. You feel tired, but you don't know why. You feel restless, but you don't know how to move. That's the cost of perfectionism. It's not just about missed opportunities. It's about the emotional weight of living half a life, always preparing, never becoming. Jung warned us about this. He said that when you repress the shadow, it doesn't disappear. It just takes control from the background. It sabotages you. It makes you overthink simple decisions. It makes you panic at the thought of starting. It convinces you that you need just a little more time, a little more study, a little more certainty. But certainty never comes, not before action. Action is what creates clarity, not the other way around. And the longer you wait, the more you feed the fear, because fear grows in silence. It grows in hesitation. It grows in isolation when you keep your ideas to yourself instead of putting them into the world. That's why perfectionism feels noble but creates suffering. It's an elegant excuse for inaction, a sophisticated form of self-sabotage. And the worst part is, you're the only one who knows it. To the outside world, you look dedicated, hardworking, meticulous. But inside, you know the truth. You're hiding, you're waiting, you're stuck. and the door is locked from the inside. So how do you open it? That's what we'll explore next. The first step is brutal honesty. You have to admit that you've been protecting yourself, not perfecting yourself. That you've been using getting ready as a shield against the risk of failure, yes, but more importantly, a shield against the risk of success. Because success means exposure, it means change, it means stepping into a new version of yourself, and that can feel like death to the ego. The ego loves comfort, it loves roles, it loves the familiar narrative of, I'm still preparing, but one day I'll get there. That story keeps you safe. It keeps you small, and small feels manageable. But Jung warned us, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. For many of us, the burden isn't just our own, it's generational. We inherited a fear of standing out, a fear of shining too brightly, a fear of drawing attention. So we learn to play small, we learn to stay quiet, to hide our talents behind endless preparation. But here's the thing. At some point, you're no longer protecting yourself, you're suffocating yourself, you're trapping your life force in an endless loop of almost, and life doesn't wait for almost. Time moves forward, opportunities pass, energy fades. If you don't use your power, it starts to rot. That's what Jung meant when he talked about psychic decay. The unused parts of you don't disappear, they become toxic. They turn into resentment, into cynicism, into self-criticism so sharp, it cuts you before anyone else can. You become your own worst enemy, and that's the paradox of perfectionism. It promises safety, but creates suffering. It pretends to protect you from failure, but delivers the slow ache of regret. So how do you break free? Not by destroying perfectionism. That's not the point. Perfectionism isn't evil, it's just outdated. It's a defense mechanism that once served you but now holds you back. The goal isn't to get rid of it. The goal is to integrate it, to transform it, to take the part of you that wants excellence and use it in service of growth, not paralysis. Jung called this individuation, becoming whole, becoming the person you actually are, not the polished version, but the real version. That version is messy. That version makes mistakes. That version starts before they're ready, because waiting for readiness is a trap. No one ever feels ready. Readiness is a myth sold by perfectionism to keep you safe. But safe doesn't mean happy. Safe doesn't mean alive. It just means stuck. So the invitation is simple but difficult. Start before you're ready. Launch the project. Write the first draft. Have the uncomfortable conversation. Put your ideas into the world, even if they're messy, especially if they're messy. Because mess is where growth happens. That's where life happens. Jung said, "Freedom begins the moment you accept that your first attempt will be imperfect." That's not just advice, it's a call to action. Because the alternative is psychic stagnation. A life lived in rehearsal, never on stage. A script written, but never performed. And the tragedy is, no one else will know what you held back. Only you will. You'll carry that secret, that weight, that sense of, I could have done more, but I didn't. That's heavier than any failure. Failure at least teaches you something, but inaction teaches you nothing, except how to live with regret. So the next time you feel the pull of perfectionism, ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? Is it failure? Or is it the terrifying possibility of succeeding, of becoming fully seen, of becoming fully alive? Because that's the real fear, and facing it is the only way through. So now what? You've seen the pattern, you've felt the trap, and maybe for the first time, you're admitting it to yourself. You've been hiding behind perfectionism because the alternative, stepping into your power, feels too big, too risky, too exposed. But what if that exposure is exactly what you need? What if the pain of almost is worse than the pain of failure? Carl Jung believed that the only way to become whole is to integrate the shadow. That means facing the parts of yourself you've rejected, not just your flaws, but your potential, your capacity for leadership, for creativity, for influence, for success. You've kept those parts locked away because you feared what they would cost you. And yes, there is a cost. When you step into your power, you lose something. You lose the comfort of excuses. You lose the shield of invisibility. You lose the safe role of the potential version of yourself. But what you gain is worth far more. You gain aliveness. You gain purpose. You gain the experience of becoming real. And that's not comfortable. It's not neat or tidy. It's raw. It's vulnerable. It's human. Perfectionism is the death of all that. It's the slow, silent erosion of life under the guise of being careful. It's a golden cage, beautiful, respectable, deadly. So the invitation is simple. Step out of the cage. Stop waiting for perfection. Start before you're ready. Fail forward. Learn as you go. Because every moment you hesitate, you feed the shadow, and the shadow will grow. It will twist your potential into anxiety. It will turn your creativity into overthinking. It will steal years from your life, disguised as preparation. But the moment you act, imperfectly, messily, courageously, you break the cycle. You reclaim your power. Jung taught that the process of individuation is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. And wholeness includes imperfection. It includes mistakes. It includes the terrifying, liberating act of living fully. So if you're stuck in the perfection trap, remember this. You're not stuck because you're lazy. You're not stuck because you lack talent. You're stuck because you're afraid of who you might become if you actually tried. And that's okay. It's human. But now you see it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So the question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? Will you keep polishing your mask? Or will you finally take it off? Will you keep waiting for the perfect moment? Or will you make this moment the one you choose to begin? Because in the end, the difference between the person you are and the person you could be is not talent. It's not intelligence. It's not even luck. It's courage. The courage to act while you're still afraid. The courage to begin before you feel ready. The courage to let the world see you, not the perfect version, but the real one. So, what's your next move?